readings today are about covenants. The first reading is about the covenant between God and humanity, personified as this baby thrown away and found in the desert. And the second, the gospel, is also about covenant, and he's talking about the marriage covenant. And the first reading today, and it's kind of a long reading, and I hope you followed along well, this description of the nation of Israel as a person, as a child, as a female who is rejected at birth, thrown out, and then, but still comes to maturity. And then God takes this child and adopts her as his own, actually marries her, okay, and enters into a covenant with her. And she becomes radiantly beautiful, filled with grace and splendor, right? And then she becomes enamored with her own beauty. And she becomes a harlot, a whore. And she gives herself to whoever. And God, you think God's going to say, and I'm going to smite you, right? And it says, and you used your own beauty, etc., and then I'm going to cover you with confusion, and you will be utterly silenced in shame when I pardon you for all that you have done. See, what is the covenant that God has made with this nation? What is God's mercy? God's mercy is his faithfulness to his covenant. And in this covenant that he entered into, it's like, how is God faithful to the covenant that he made? Again, this poetic description of the nation of Israel as this bride. How is it that he pardons her? It's the cross, right? It's the cross. It's the cross. It's Jesus taking upon himself the sins of the world and pouring the grace of the new and eternal what? Covenant out on all of us that we may. So Ezekiel is prophesying this mercy, the covenant being renewed and fulfilled. And guess what marriage between a Christian man and a Christian woman is supposed to be? Oh, it starts with the letter C, a covenant. And guess what it's supposed to remind the world of? God's faithfulness. Christian marriage is supposed to have the same kind of commitment in it. Now, nobody said, it is one of my great privileges to work with couples as they're getting ready to be married. And I hate to be like Debbie Dowder when I'm telling them, it's going to be hard, you know. But to express the reality that marriage is a death. It's a death to your old self, and it's a new life. And you know, we say sometimes, death doesn't happen all at once, right? First, I've used this example before. First your hair turns gray, then it turns loose, right? It's like we die a little at a time. And so that's, you know, even in marriage, there is the reality. And I say to people, and again, this isn't me making this up, this is the wisdom of the ages. What's the number one factor that will determine whether a marriage is going to make it in the long run or not? The number one thing. What is the number one predictor of whether or not a marriage is going to make it? Are you committed to the marriage from day one, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, in every circumstance? Is it a lifelong commitment? And that's what Jesus is saying. When you get into marriage, you better get in it for the long haul and know it's not going to be easy. And when we do the vows, what do? Good times and bad, sickness and health. And I know I'm speaking to you all who have reached the age in your lives where, whatever happened in your marriage and relationships and whatever, you've made that right with God, or you're striving to. But for your children and for your grandchildren and for those people who are getting married, right? What's the number one predictor? You got to be committed to it. 100%. In good times and in bad. And faithful to the covenant. Jesus is faithful to us, isn't he? And he asks us to be faithful to one another.